Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alameen. Wassalatu wassalam ala Sayyidina Muhammad wa ala alihi wa sahbihi ajma'in. Assalamu alaikum, everyone. May peace be upon you. This is Edward Ahmed Mitchell, the Deputy Director of the Council on American Islamic Relations, welcoming you to today's episode of CAIR on Air. I hope all of you are doing well and staying safe. As you know, it's a big day in Washington, D.C. Narendra Modi, the Prime Minister of India, is visiting the White House and also planning to speak to a joint session of Congress. At the president's invitation, at the invitation of the leaders of both houses of Congress. This has obviously upset many people who care about human rights, who care about religious freedom, who care about religious minorities suffering oppression and violence in India, as well as journalists who are experiencing persecution and silencing and many other issues that Narendra Modi has unleashed upon the people of India. There are protests happening right now outside of the White House. There have been numerous editorials written, and also numerous members of Congress are going to be boycotting Mr. Modi's speech to Congress later today. To discuss why all this is happening, who is Narendra Modi, what is his history, why are people so concerned about him and the embrace of him by our government, I want to bring on a special guest, our Research and Advocacy Director, Mr. Corey Saylor, an expert in Islamophobia who has been tracking this issue and many other issues related to global Islamophobia. Corey, assalamu alaikum. How are you doing?
Alaikum salam, Edward. Thanks for having me on. And before we dive into any questions, I want to just double down on what you were saying. If folks are in DC and they're inclined, there is a protest at Black Lives Matter Plaza today. It's going all the way through this evening throughout Modi's visit. You can go over there. Great partners of ours like Hindus for Human Rights and Indian American Muslim Council have contributed to that protest, along with a number of other groups. And really, if you want to be part of the voice that's pushing back against repression of minorities in India, go over there and join them. They're great organizations doing great work.
Absolutely, absolutely. Thank you, Corey, for that. So, Corey, for those who maybe been living under a rock and haven't seen what's going on, give us an overview. What is President Biden doing with Mr. Modi today? What is Congress doing with Mr. Modi? And what's their explanation for why they're rolling out the red carpet?
Yeah, let's roll it back a little bit. So,
sure.
Narendra Modi was chief minister of the Indian state of Gujarat when riots happened there that led to the deaths of on the order of 1,000 Muslims. And our country banned him from coming. In 2005, he applied for a visa and that was denied because of his role in the repression of the rights of Indian minorities in Gujarat, where he was chief minister. In about 2008, his team sort of dipped their toe in the water again to see if he could get a visa or not, and things didn't look good. So they didn't want to go through that public embarrassment and go through that entire process again. So this country, the United States, living up to our own religious values and saying that you should not target religious minorities, did the right thing, right? We told Narendra Modi, as long as you're doing those things, you don't get to come here. Then he got elected Prime Minister of India and came to the United States shortly thereafter and got to address a joint session of Congress. This time around, he gets a joint session of Congress again, which is where the House and the Senate will come together to listen to remarks by him. And President Biden is giving him the honor of a state visit. And this, to us, is sort of the biggest misstep in this entire thing. He is a world leader. You have to deal with him, right? You do not have to roll out the red carpet for him. So it could be a working visit where we discuss issues of common concern and also raise things like you shouldn't be repressing your religious minorities. You shouldn't be targeting journalists so they don't feel comfortable covering your administration. Today at a press conference at the White House, one question Modi was willing to take, and he hasn't given a press conference where he answered questions in India since he took over as prime minister. So it should be something where we work with him. He gets a working visit is what the White House would call it, but there is 100% no need for him to get the honor of the United States giving him a state visit. And there's definitely no reason for him to get a second speech in front of a joint session of Congress.
How have members of Congress been reacting to this, Corey? There's been a lot of feedback I know they're receiving from members of the public, including the Muslim community and the Hindu community that's concerned about Mr. Modi. What's been the scene there in Capitol Hill?
Well, first of all, you sometimes want to name the people who have raised concerns, and California Representative Ro Khanna seems to be the one who initiated the request for Narendra Modi to have a joint session of Congress. Certainly, it was the leadership of the House and Senate that sent the letter, but Ro Khanna has been hearing from a lot of his constituents, as he should, raising concerns about why would you invite a prime minister who's backsliding on democracy, building closer ties with Russia, and repressing religious minorities. So he'll be there he's sort of the concern. On the other side of it, we have some real heroes here, Edward, and that's an impressive thing when you're in Washington D.C. and there are a lot of political push and pull on you. So Chris Van Hollen and Representative Jayapal led a letter, 75 members of the House and Senate sent to President Biden, asking him to be sure to raise some of these difficult issues with Narendra Modi while they meet. And then at 4 o'clock, when Narendra Modi is addressing Congress, so far that we know of, Representative Rashida Tlaib, Representative Jamal Bowman, Alexandra Ocasio-Cortez, Kwesi Mfume, and Ilhan Omar will all not be in the room. And that's exceedingly important as a political statement, particularly in this time when Washington, D.C., as a whole, our political elites have decided, let's give the repression a wink and a nod and give Modi the red carpet, as opposed to let's call him out on the carpet for the things that he's doing to backslide Indian democracy.
And of course, we thank those members of Congress who are boycotting the speech and those who have raised concerns. But it is, so remarkable, Corey, that someone who is directly responsible for enabling mass acts of violence against religious minorities, such that he was banned from coming to our country for quite a long period of time, is being honored in this way. As you noted, not just a working visit, but a state dinner, joint session of Congress. What message did this send about the way American elected officials view the Muslim community and Islamophobia? Does it send a message at all, direct or implicit?
I think the clear thing here is that U.S. elected officials they've come around in many ways on Islamophobia and will often give it lip service, pushing back against it. But, let's look at policies, both Democratic and Republican. So under President Obama, we had the Countering Violent Extremism programs that very explicitly targeted the Muslim community. I don't even need to tell you about the things that happened under President Trump, but as just a small reminder, because people do forget, there was that Muslim in Africa ban that he imposed. So really neither party has been great on this issue. And I think that when you have this giant minority of Muslims in India and they look to the United States to, in many ways, protect them from these ongoing acts of repression where they are humiliated in the streets, where they are murdered and there's no real accountability for that, where they are stopped from just simply practicing their faith. They look to us for leadership. And unfortunately, what they see is President Biden and our political elites rolling out the red carpet because they have decided that trade and money is more important.
Sadly, sad to say, but it appears to be true. So tell me, Corey, about the work that your team has been doing to address this in coordination with other organizations inside and outside the Muslim community.
Well, it's important, Edward, that even when the deck is stacked against you, as it is in this case, right? State visit, speech before Congress, you have to be vocal about that. And I'd love to talk to you with you about that a bit more. But to the work that's been going on, CAIR, as many of our viewers know, we have a very solid voice in the media and in social media, and we've been deploying that voice along with our partners to make sure that the folks that are paying attention to this issue aren't just getting one single-sided narrative. They're able to get facts from both sides and assess for themselves and make their own decisions, right? Do you want to support political repression in India, or do you want to support another democracy like the United States that can honor many different faiths at one time and be strong? So we've been very solidly present in the media, on social media. We have issued action alerts for those folks who are not in Washington, D.C., who want to make their voice known to their member of Congress. And yesterday, we were very fortunate on Twitter. One of those action alerts was trending, which means you're getting a lot of attention to it. During the recent Hill Advocacy Days, organized by our partners at the USCMO, more than 500 Muslims were in Washington, D.C. They met with about 200 congressional offices. And one of the issues that they brought to those congressional offices in person was Modi's visit and considering not rolling out the red carpet for him in all the ways that the political elites are doing so. So we've been very present. We have helped support those who have organized, for instance, the rally here in DC. I'll mention them again off the top of my head: Indian American Muslim Council, Hindus for Human Rights. There are other organizations. I just don't have them in front of me. So if I'm ignoring them, please forgive me. It's not intentional. But we're supporting them in their efforts as well. And that's the critical piece of this work, Edward, is that CAIR is one organization. We have certain strengths. We'd like to partner with other groups that sort of complement those strengths and who share the values that we have on this issue. And really that enhances all of our ability to have impact. And that's why this event at Black Lives Matter Plaza that's going on right now and through this evening is so important, because you can go there and you can see the number of different voices from many different spheres of work, all concerned about this one same thing.
Absolutely. Last question, Corey. Where do we go from here? Mr. Modi, I assume, will be departing soon, and many people are concerned about escalating repression in that country, perhaps emboldened by the embrace he's received here. And I've noted this before. You made the point that anti-Muslim bigotry has shifted from being dominated by particular hate groups to being movement-based. Tell us about your concerns or thoughts about where we might be going from here in terms of global Islamophobia, including with the Indian government.
Well, the thing to think about here, Edward, and we've been pointing this out in our releases, a group in Australia recently, looking at Islamophobia online, found that India accounts for the majority of Islamophobic content that's being posted online right now. So while obviously, for humanitarian, for ethical, and just pragmatic purposes, the focus has to be on protecting religious minorities in India, we also have to consider that that hate is being exported to the rest of the world. So vast amount of hate content online coming from India. We had the episode last year in New Jersey where, as part of an event honoring India, the organizers included a bulldozer, which is now a symbol of something that is used to destroy Muslim homes in India, in their parade. And they ultimately had to apologize for it because there were voices here that stood up, pointed it out, and pushed back against it. We've also documented out in California people who were protesting against Modi's government being essentially assaulted by a man who tried to grab one of their signs, pull it away from them, and yelled anti-Muslim slurs at them. So it's a problem in India that they are exporting to the rest of the world. In terms of global Islamophobia, those folks who support the Hindutva nationalist movement that Modi is the leader of will work to isolate Muslim voices in the United States and deplatform us, right? They don't want us to have a political voice. So we have to stand up and resist against that, because this story that we're talking about right now, Edward, about people suffering in real time in India needs to be told. And if groups like CAIR, Hindus for Human Rights, and others get deplatformed, essentially no one's going to be telling that story. So it's really important. And I want to kind of finish up on something that I think is really important, Edward. In my survey of social media over the last few days, There have been a number of people who have said things like, why are you bothering to do this? He's going to the White House, he's going to Congress, it's pointless. And I just want to think about that with folks, because if you're going to be an activist, you have to have a sense of optimism about things. You have to have a sense that you can be an agent of change. As Muslims, I don't think that it's our job to plan results. I think it's our job to do the work. And inshallah, we rely on Allah for the results. But you have to be an optimist. And then I would say you take that, you shove that down, and you wrap it in pragmatism, because our work is not something that happens overnight. It often takes years to achieve the outcomes we're looking for. And in this case, okay, maybe only a few members of Congress decide to go with the boycott. Each of those is an individual who has made a choice, who has a voice, and it is from there that change happens, right? So I am always comfortable being part of a movement that some people look at and they go like, I don't see why you're doing that because it seems like you're completely in the minority. That's okay. We look to the African-American civil rights movement, who suffered through tremendous hardship and gave us Muslims civil rights acts that we use to defend ourselves every day. We look to other movements throughout history who have started as one, two voices and been able to bring significant ethical, positive change into people's lives. And that's the optimism. You got to just decide you're going to do something. And I will end on this. I'm fine with people criticizing. My advice to them would be, go do something better, right? If you don't like the things that you see some groups doing, go do something better, because at the end of the day, there are people suffering in India and they need our help, and let's do everything that we can to help them. I'm willing to work with anybody.
Absolutely. And one bit of news for everyone who may not have seen this yet, there was a press conference held between President Biden and Mr. Modi. One reporter was able to ask a question. That reporter was Ms. Siddiqui, a Muslim reporter with the Wall Street Journal, who confronted Mr. Modi about the discrimination that's happening in India and asked him what he's going to do to protect religious minorities. And he vaguely simply said there is no discrimination, and democracies can't allow discrimination, and we believe in democracy, and blah, blah, blah. So no acknowledgement of what he has been perpetrating in this country, just platitudes committing to democracy and denying human rights violations. So not a surprise there, but I am glad to hear that the one reporter who got to ask a question asked about that issue on the bright side. So alhamdulillah, sign of the importance of Muslim engagement and advancement in all sectors of society, including the media.
I agree. And if you want a counter to Modi's completely expected and non-factual answer, I invite you to go to the website of the United States Commission on International Religious Freedom and look at their reporting. I invite you to look at the U.S. State Department's country report on India, Amnesty International, Physicians Without Frontiers. Like, all of these groups have documented exactly what we're talking about. And, denial, you can do that all you want to. The reality is it's there in front of everybody who can look at a TV set.
Absolutely. Thank you, Corey. Really appreciate your time, perspective, all the work you and Amar Ansari and the rest of the team have been doing on this issue. Thank you so much. We'll see you soon, inshallah.
Great talking to you, Edward. Thank you.
Thank you, Corey. And thank you all for watching. And if you want to join the protests, you can head down to Black Lives Matter Plaza in D.C. right now. Otherwise, follow online, send an action alert to members of Congress, ask them to boycott the joint address. You can find all that information on CAIR.com. Also visit the websites of Indian American Muslim Council, Hindus for Human Rights, and other organizations working to counter Mr. Modi's visit. Thank you all so much. We'll see you next time, inshallah. Until then, have a wonderful Dhul Hijjah. Make sure to do abundant dhikr and other good deeds. And I hope you have a wonderful Eid and a wonderful time with your families, inshallah. Assalamu alaikum. May peace be upon you.